But I do want to point out, we had a little bit of a chance to speak with Hardeep before the program, and what an inspirational story.
Amazing.
So, Ian and Elena, why don't you introduce us?
Absolutely. Well, this is Hardeep, right, who is a great friend of mine as well. And hopefully on his knee, we're going to see the dog that,
Yes.
that really wags the tail.
Hi, Ted.
What's the dog's name?
His name is Ted.
Ted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking. Okay. That's
And he's a Jack Daniels. He's a cross between a Jack Daniels. You got me started. A Jack Russell. A Jack Russell and a Chihuahua.
He's adorable.
Oh, that's
Beautiful.
You just gave him billing on your title.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good to have him with us.
Hardeep is a great friend of mine. Now, Hardeep will tell us in a second, please, because basically you were a very high-powered financial executive in the City of London, and then your son was born, and that's really changed your life. It's changed your direction, and creating something that is the most incredible thing in Great Britain today. So tell us a little bit about your story, Hardeep, please.
Thank you, Ian. And first of all, I'm delighted to be here today. Jacalyn and Al, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. So as you said, Ian, very kindly, I spent a good 15, 16 years in the city. I worked in the hedge fund industry, financial services. I had to be very commercial in the way I thought. I was doing extremely well, pretty much at the top of my career, I would say. And then on November the 18th, 2006, my little son, Ishan, who you see in the background over here, quite young, was born. And at the last minute, there was a severe birthing complication. He lacked oxygen to the brain for a period of 17 minutes. And that created a global brain damage to him. And the first thing we were told was that if he survives, I mean, you've got a period of a few days. If he survives, he's going to be very, very severely disabled. His condition is called cerebral palsy. He's going to be a vegetable. Not my words, hospital's words. We were given the option of actually turning off his life support machine, would you believe, when he was in front of us. It was really, really awful. And I think one of the first things that hit me, Ian, was the fact that all this money that I'd saved up over these years couldn't reverse his brain damage. And the other thing that hit me was, 1 minute previously, my life was, in inverted commas, going exactly as I needed it to in every single way possible. But within the next few minutes, everything changed. My entire purpose, my entire outlook, my entire vision, my entire dream, everything changed because I couldn't see past the fact that this little baby had been born into our life in a very, very different way. So it was very, very difficult, Ian, and I don't talk about mental health very much, but in the world that we're in today, especially post-COVID, it was an extremely trying time from a mental health point of view in terms of questioning yourself, why me? Why did this happen? And those are some very difficult things that we go through. But what came out of Ishan being born the way that he was understanding the world of disability, interacting with people with disabilities, suddenly understanding that they communicate in a totally different way to what we might be used to. But that doesn't mean that they're not capable. They're very capable. You just have to see things in a different way, and you just have to change your perspective. So that was a very, very important thing for me to learn, from Ishan's experience. And a few years later, I met my business partner, Shane Bratby. Off goes Ted now. Shane Bratby, who helped me to understand that people with disabilities really struggle with starting businesses because investors don't look at them as investable typically. They look at them from a grant point of view or from a charitable point of view or from a competition point of view. So what we suddenly thought was, why don't we set up a business with my sort of financial background and entrepreneurship background that would help disabled people to start their own businesses and invest in them as individuals, look past their disability and support them in a way that they needed to be supported. So that was how Kaleidoscope was really born. It was an investment company that was meant to help people with disabilities to start their own businesses.
Wow, Hardeep,
Amazing.
I mean, that is an amazing journey. Thank you for sharing that with us.
That's cool.
Pretty, yeah, it's great. And you've devoted your life to Ishan, obviously, and you've created opportunities for people with disabilities. I mean, are there any highs, lows that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think my greatest high, that's a great question, Helena. My greatest high was actually being at NatWest, who's been our sponsoring bank, back in 2015. We held the first ever Disabled Entrepreneurs Conference that there'd ever been. And I was standing in front of 200 people with different types of disabilities. And we had sign language interpreters, we had a hearing loop, we had people from all different types of disabilities. And I just stood up in front of them, and I don't mind talking. You know, I love talking. And I just froze for a moment, and I thought, my goodness, this is what life is about. This is what life is about. It's about making an impact, making a change, watching a community of people that are otherwise don't get the opportunity necessarily around entrepreneurship to be able to network with each other. I think that's been incredibly powerful for me. So that was one of my best highs ever. And you can't put money on that. Okay, that's not a monetary high. That's a real fulfilling high. The low, one of my biggest lows has been running a business is a challenge. I have to say that, you know, and I think that we've expanded from entrepreneurship into recruitment. So we have a recruitment arm now that will help people with disabilities to find employment, because that's a very big issue for a lot of people around the world today, is actually getting disabled people into jobs. So I think, you know, coming up across barriers from companies that are making excuses not to hire disabled people is sometimes really difficult to hear, Helena, because, you know, you need people to change their mindsets. And there's a lot of people that have paid lip service to things over the years. And I think now is the time to change. And I think pushing against that wall and constantly fighting can be draining sometimes. You know, that takes a lot out of you. But I think being an entrepreneur and making sure that you've got the right drive and motivation, you know, I'm a Christian as well. I feel very mission led in what I'm doing. And of course, my little boy over here keeps me going, is what constantly pushes. But, you know, we are pushing against a lot of closed doors here, and we are trying to change the way the world thinks.
Well, you know, listening to your story, you asked the question, why me? Which I'm sure has been translated into every human language. And I'm sure every human in the history of humans has asked that question at one time or another. And the power of your story, Hardeep, is that you're encouraging people to think past the pain and look for the positive answer to that question. It's a challenge. And so how are you going to meet that challenge? And for so many people with disabilities, maybe you can explain how difficult it is for them to find jobs in the UK and probably everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Al. Thank you. I think one of the first challenge for a person with a disability, and I have met 1,200 plus, okay, 1,200 people with disabilities from 65 different types of disabilities from 28 countries. Okay, so in my experience, I just want to say in my experience, the biggest challenge first is overcoming the hurdle of self-confidence. Because a lot of people with disabilities, they haven't had the opportunities they deserve. They've been knocked, they've been rejected, they've been made to feel that the careers or the pathway that they want to follow isn't going to be available for them. Okay, so they've had to change. They've had to change their goalposts, and they've had to become people they almost don't want to be, take opportunities they don't want to take, and become a lot more demotivated. And that demotivation eventually affects your mental health. It eventually gets you more depressed. And it then makes you a worse individual to be interviewed or to be positive with, because you've had all these knocks. So the first thing I would say is that you've got to try and find your strengths and your talents and not let society define who you are, but let yourself define who you are. Really think about what your talents are. And I say this from somebody that had a dream job. You know, one of the things I didn't say is that in the UK, we have a fantastic entrepreneur. We have a show called Dragon's Den, and I worked for a dragon once called James Caan. And the thing that I learned about that experience is a dream is achievable. You've got to believe that you can achieve a dream. And I would say that with people with disabilities, the world we live in now, it's changing. People are becoming more open. A dear friend of ours, Caroline Casey, in the Valuable 500 initiative, which is all about getting disability on the boardroom agenda, just achieved a massive milestone over the last 24 hours, and that they achieved 500 companies in the world that bought into this. This is something significant. So there is change afoot, but people have to be brave. Approach companies like Kaleidoscope that think in a very entrepreneurial way that could help you to define what it is that you actually want to do. And, I think, Al, to your question about UK and employment, of course it's difficult, without question. But I think people are engaging us. We've heard in the last 6 to 9 months, especially as we're beginning to come out of COVID, that people are thinking about recruitment again. So I actually think with people with disabilities, especially this new way of working from home, where you don't have to always physically travel, is a fantastic opportunity to get to find jobs more in line with what you may want.
Hardeep, this is such a powerful story. I found myself, very moved backstage here, and I'm just thinking about everything that you shared with us. Here, you're really successful. You've done well in your career, and no matter how much money you have, no matter all the people you know, it doesn't make a difference, because you are faced with this challenge and decisions that you have to make. And my question for you is, I'm sure there are other people out there who would really like to know this. They are going through something similar. Maybe it's a different discipline. Maybe their child has something else. But what would you say to them when they have to make these tough decisions, that they know that they're on the right path and they're doing the right thing?
I'm getting some very good questions here. Thank you, Jacalyn. If I were to talk about what I had to do, I had to reboot my entire life, literally press pause on 36 years and reevaluate. Number one, what is my purpose on this earth? What do I really want to achieve as Hardeep? What do I want to do? What do I want my legacy to be? Okay, so it's understanding what you as an individual want to be able to do, because I still think that as human beings, whatever we have, whether it's a family member with a disability, whether we have a disability, we have to understand what it is that we want, and we have to think about that very deeply. The second thing we need to think about is, what are we capable of, right? Everybody can do something. I think it was a famous tennis player, Martina Navratilova. She had a wonderful phrase, and one of her quotations, which is, everybody is good at something. Everybody is good at something. Okay. It's identifying what that thing is that you're good at. Okay. And then it is all about being brave. Okay. And having the courage to try and make that change and make an impact. And you're talking to somebody that's done that, right? These are not empty words. You're talking to somebody that's sort of, I have this sort of, sometimes it's an imagination that you're flying sky high, and then you hit rock bottom, and you think that's rock bottom until you fall down the drain, and then you go into the sewers, and then you realize you're at rock bottom, right? When you hit that rock bottom, that's when you find that core strength and that drive and motivation. And I think what you have to do is that, when I look at my son, for instance, he doesn't communicate, he's nonverbal. Yeah, I have the best ever conversations with him, because I just have to lie down with him, or I just have to be around his energy. I just have to watch the way that he looks at me or he smiles at me. And I've got my communication, I've got my drive, I've got my motivation, excuse me. And that's what drives me. So I think it's really important to understand your drivers, your motivation. And money, we think money is a great motivator. Money will come and go. Money will come and go in life, right? Money is not the right motivation. You need to think differently about your life and what you want to achieve. So that's what I would say to people that are in the position that we're in now. And a lot of people sometimes say to me when they come and visit Ishan, they actually have an appreciation for their life, right? And they say, and they may not say it in this way, but I know they're thinking is, wow, my life is not that bad, because look at this poor kid and what he can't do, and look at the kind of first world problems that we complain about. I don't hold umbrage to that at all, but people need to realize that there are much bigger problems in this world. And, people with different types of disabilities can still find a way to communicate, can still find a way to do really good things. You just have to give them the opportunity and give them the confidence to do that.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Hardeep, you're the first trillionaire we've ever interviewed. The first.
Do you know what the funny thing is? I'm nowhere near a trillionaire, and to be very
I'm
kind
talking about value, not money, which is really your point.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's very kind of you to say that.
Can I make a point as well? Because I think something that I've worked with some of the people and with Hardeep quite a bit. Now, Hardeep, don't you agree that most people, myself, I give 100%. Helena gives 100%. Disabled people give 1,000%.
Very true.
Because they really, really, really value anything that they're given as a job. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, well, Ian, you've been a fantastic supporter of Kaleidoscope, and the fact that we're here today is evidence of that again. And you've been good enough to come to some of our sessions, and you've actually met with some of our entrepreneurs. And you are 100% right. You know, people with disabilities, what they do behind the scenes is something that most of us would have no idea about. I have people in my team that spend 2.5 to 3 hours every morning just getting ready. And yet, if I said to them, could you please be at a call at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? They won't even think twice. They're there, right? And there's other people that will go offline for 3 or 4 days. I won't hear from them. My own partner's a bit similar to that. But then all of a sudden he's there 24 hours a day for the next 4 days, right? Everybody has a different way of working. And you're right, it will take them longer to do things. I have blind individuals working with me. You know, they have to read the screen using JAWS. It takes much longer. There are people that are deaf that work with us, you know, finding interpreters that have got convenient times when you need them. So they do absolutely work much harder, but a lot of them don't say anything about it. They just carry on. And this is the thing that I found that is the most remarkable, is that actually to them, a job is a job, and they will give it their best. And they might work in a different way. And my attitude, Ian, is, as you know, I don't clock hours that people work. For me, it doesn't matter about the hours. It's about the output, right? Mm. You work when you want, when it's convenient. Let's have a target we're aiming towards. And that's how I've learned to operate now. You know, it's not about hours anymore. So you're right. They work so much harder. They don't necessarily say very much about it. But then their output is very often different because they think differently.
You are truly an amazing person, Hardeep, just incredible. But I have another question for you. We've had a number of people on some other shows that I have, and they talked about the connection between animals and people. And so I'm wondering what role Ted plays in the relationship with your son and also with you, that Ted can probably sense feelings and emotions. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, that's very, very true. I mean, look, I have to be honest. I have not been a great dog lover until my partner came into my life 3.5 years ago. And Ted is actually her dog. And I'm so attached to him. It's unbelievable, right? We have a little piano stool right next to me, and he's got a blanket. And he sits on that blanket. When I work, he's sleeping. And very often, you know, they say it's calming to be able to stroke something or to play with something when you're working. In the city, you might have a stress ball or something like that. With Ted, it's like a real life toy that's in your lap that will lick you, give you love, you know, just kind of make you feel, actually, that's what I would call is unconditional love. That's what I would say. You know, for me, that's what I feel from him. And for Ishan, when in the days pre-COVID, I used to put Ted on Ishan's wheelchair and I used to push him around. And Ted was very considerate with Ishan. He sensed something was different. He would lick him in a different way. He would curl up in a ball in a different way. So I think dogs are very, very intuitive. And in fact, all animals, Jacalyn, I think that it's a very good thing for a human being, I think.
Thank you for sharing that. And Ted, we're glad that you're on the show with us, even though you're not there right now. But
he is. His mum's come home now, so he's gone to his mum.
My last question for you for today, I hope that you'll come back because we have plenty of questions, but let's talk about how we can help you in America. So in terms of getting investments or providing employment opportunities, what can we do to support your work?
So that's a great question, Jacalyn. I think the most important thing for me right now is to get the investment community to think about disability in a different way. We live in a world where we're all thinking about making 10x or 20x or 30x returns on investments, especially a lot of these venture capitalists. And technology in the accessible space, disability space, it's a huge arena. Everybody wants to get involved in it. And it's important because actually technology helps people with disabilities to communicate. But there are hundreds, thousands of disabled people that actually have amazing ideas that may not yield those 10x or 20x or 30x returns, but that are still fantastic returns, that can still make people money, that can still make a very big difference to society, that can still have a very, very big social impact, okay? And this is something we need to think about, social impact. And I want investors, and I implore investors to think differently now. Let's think in a venture philanthropy way. A lot of people out there that are in this world will understand venture philanthropy. They'll understand ESG, environment, social governance, in terms of the way people are trying to think. And I would love people to approach us that have this venture philanthropy mindset and ask us, what have we learned over the last 6 years? Who have we met? What sectors are going to grow? What types of individuals are going to succeed? Because guess what? We have that information and we want to share it. Because actually, we can't succeed by ourselves. We need other people to partner with us, and we need people to think differently. So for me, disability, entrepreneurship, thinking differently, and trusting in people with disabilities to succeed, but in a different way. It might take them a bit longer. You might have to be a bit more patient, but I can assure you that I've built a team and I've built a process and a structure that will enable that to happen if people give us a chance. And there's a lot of big philanthropists in the world today. America is phenomenal for this, right? So it's engaging people like that to understand that here is an opportunity that people are not seeing, but we've seen. So give us a chance to be able to explain that to you. And I promise you won't be disappointed.
Thank you so much for your authenticity, for your transparency, for being a beacon of light, and for your leadership. You're just doing incredible work there. For people who are interested in investing or interested in reaching out and they can't read the banner, they're listening on the radio, what's the best way to contact you?
So our website is www.kaleidoscope.group, and that's spelled KALEIDOSCOPE, kaleidoscope.group. You're testing my spelling there, Jacalyn.
You did very well.
I had to take a pause and think, how do I spell kaleidoscope?
Well, it has certainly been our pleasure having you here. And as I should have mentioned to our other guests as well, we'd love to have you come back on this show and others. We have, I think, 16 other programs. And so we'd love to have you share your story there as well. And for anybody who might have missed any of our guests and their interviews from the beginning of the show, please go over to our YouTube channel, Dr. Jacalyn LLC, and subscribe, and you can watch the show from the beginning there.
Thank you very much, Jacalyn.
Thank you
Al.
again.
And thank you again, Ian and Helena. Lovely to see you.
So powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, Ted. See you later.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Well, as if Hal had his hat on, I'd say hats off to you two for